Equations and inequalities. There are steps that we follow in order to solve equations. The first step is to reserve the order of operations, then take the inverse operation to isolate the variable. Let's take a look at an example. In this example, we want to solve the equation for x. To do this, we need to focus on the numbers on the left-hand side of the equation that are attached to the variable x. We know that we need to do the inverse of the order of operations and move the plus 6 to the right side. To do this, we first take the inverse of addition and subtract 6 from both sides. 6 cancels out, and we are left with 3x equals negative 15. Next, we will take the inverse of multiplication and divide both sides by 3. Then we simplify. The 3 cancels out, and we are left with our final answer of x equals negative 5. Let's solve this equation for v. To do that, we need to follow the 2 steps to solving an equation. By looking at the side of the equation that has the variable v, we can see that we need to get rid of the denominator. To do this, we multiply both sides by 3. The 3's cancel out, and we are left with v plus 9 equals 24. Now, we can subtract both sides by 9, and we are left with our answer of v equals 15. Now, let's move on to inequalities. Here's a quick review. Remember, the arrow pointing to the left means less than, and the arrow pointing to the right means greater than. If you see a little line underneath the arrow, it adds equal to. For example, this symbol means less than or equal to, and then that would mean that this symbol means greater than or equal to. When solving inequalities, we use the same steps as we used for solving an equation. We still add and subtract normally. The only difference is when multiplying or dividing by a negative number, the inequality sign flips. Let's look at an example. Here, we must divide both sides by negative 2 in order to isolate the variable. The 2's cancel out, the inequality sign flips, and we get y is less than negative 4. When graphing inequalities, it's important to know which kind of circle to use. We use an open circle for less than or greater than signs. We use a closed circle for less than or equal to and for greater than or equal to. The arrow itself tells us which way to shade when graphing. Now, we can graph inequalities, but first we must determine what kind of circle to use. Here, we have x is greater than 3, so we will use an open circle. The inequality symbol is pointing to the right, so we will shade to the right. And that's it. Let's move on to a more difficult problem. In this next slide, we are going to combine everything that we have learned thus far. We are going to first solve an inequality for a variable and then graph the solution on a number line. We need to isolate the variable. The first step is to subtract both sides by 7. The 7 cancels out, and we are left with negative 7x is greater than or equal to negative 7. Next, we divide both sides by negative 7, and the 7's cancel out. Remember, when multiplying or dividing both sides of an inequality by a negative number, the sign flips. Now, we simplify the fraction and get x is less than or equal to 1. Finally, we can graph, and it looks like this.